This is a travelogue. It begins with a concept as solid as a rock and as fragile as this particular Monday before the election.
Hey, William. My name is Paul. I'm a volunteer with the Pennsylvania Democrats.
This is Grassroots on Concrete, a Mission District sidewalk where volunteers have taken up the ground game, as they call it. Democracy in action with 2020 foresight, they hope.
You know, my parents are immigrants from the former Soviet Union, so the idea of voting and the idea of being able to express what you want has always been a pretty critical thing for us in our household.
Calling voters is very stressful.
Are they nice?
Sometimes, but most often they are not.
The man behind this call center has become an institution in the Mission District, even at 31 years old. Manny Yukerio put up the booths and lets democracy happen.
If the elections are free and fair, then the institution of democracy still functions. If the election's tampered with, that's a different story. But if the question is, if he wins fairly, then the institution of this democratic government has done its job.
This journey through election week really began with a simple question. If you could write a letter to or have a conversation with democracy, what would you want to say at this moment in time? We put it out there on social media, got some interesting answers. Among them, tired, anxious, hopeful, said one. I'd ask democracy to please come back, said another. And as for some of the people we've already met,
Get your act together.
We are in deep trouble. This is the final hour.
indeed, literally. As they continued making calls, the presidential candidates crisscrossed swing states.
This guy doesn't understand. He doesn't understand sacrifice. He doesn't understand. He talks about being a tough guy.
And yet, by then, most of us had already voted.
Are they signed and sealed correctly?
That's James Allen outside San Francisco City Hall. He lost count long ago of how many ballots he's collected. It's a temporary job, he says, and a permanent commitment.
Vote. Participate.
Here we found a uniquely San Francisco scene with security tight, unless it wasn't. And we also found a sense of urgency. If you were to write a letter to democracy, what would be the first line of that letter?
We are losing you.
You make it sound like a love-lost letter.
Absolutely.
How so?
I serve this country in uniform. Very proud of the democracy we have, and I can see it slipping away.
But that is not only a one-party point of view. What is the first sentence?
We the people under God.
We've moved to Marin County now, where Republicans make up only 14% of registered voters. Donna Fife spent this day at the registrar's office working as an observer. She's a figurative stranger in a strange ideological land. What are you looking for?
Freedom, liberty.
No, here, when you're observing, it says election observer.
Oh, I'm looking at the process. We're looking at the process. They have an established process, and we're looking to see if they're adhering to the process that they set up.
As the day ended, it seemed that mistrust of the system really does cut both ways. We finished with Sarah Nagel.
Dear democracy, you really need to do better right now.
She writes a blog for the Marin Republican Party.
I believe democracy does work. I think at the moment, a lot of people have forgotten that we're really supposed to work together, though. It's become a winner-take-all scenario for a lot of people.
Hey, diversity! That's why you voted for Trump.
I think we've lost a sense of belief in America right now. I think too many people, they're like people who are renovating a house and get bored, so they decide to tear the house down and build something new, instead of, accepting the fact that, you just need to repaint it and do a little bit of work.
On what the rest of the country considers to be a fringy leftist coast, this is what a constitutional revolution looks like. A blue wave, we might call it, especially at a place like the county courthouse in Oakland. For Mark and Rowena Ellerson, casting votes, a family event.
Dear democracy, help us to have a leader that can help us to take control of this coronavirus.
Dear democracy.
What the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing?
That's how you start the letter?
Yes.
And what's the second sentence?
Help.
Andrea Bates, a retired drug counselor dressed in red this day, voting an act of faith. This election, almost like an exorcism.
I gotta believe in something. I believe in America. You understand? I believe that we can do better, and we're going to do better.
Democracy means to me freedom for all.
Now to Mary Campbell with her daughter behind her, a day to remember for them on multiple levels.
This is her first time officially voting, and this is a big deal for her and for us.
A voice is a voice, whether it's small or big. Yes. It's your voice, and you should be heard.
We will remember 2020 as the no-touchy election, when we used tongs to vote in some places, when exercising our constitutional right looked more like a scene from a science fiction movie. And yet, with daily COVID-19 infections reaching new highs, we turned out in record numbers.
That we understand just how much is at stake in this election. We know that has hit people because it matters enough that folks are willing to risk their life to do it.
And we did it in all kinds of spaces. Voting and democracy is about empowerment.
You have to fight for it. It is not given. It is a continuous exercise. It's a practice.
Lily Gangas is a Bolivian immigrant and now a force for Latinos in technology. On this election day, she's getting out the vote on Oakland streets. She's one of 32 million Latinos eligible to cast ballots.
Is it in danger?
Right now, I think we've seen the potential if we don't take care of it and if we take it for granted. But I think, if anything, there's democracy is more alive now than it's been before.
Hours later, Nevada, a watch event for Marin Republicans. Many of them did not want to be on camera for fear of losing friends. And yet there were others who sought my camera out. When we asked who might be willing to speak, Brooke Salamarian stepped forward. He expected a long night.
Well, I mean, I'm not entirely sure how this election is going to go. I don't really know what to anticipate, but regardless of the outcome, we have to respect the election.
But it wouldn't be that easy.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
It is worth noting that across the Bay Area, this election has generated a run on plywood. And in Oakland, also a run on paint.
I think it's just hoping for the best, and that's all we can do right now. To say we're hoping for the worst, expecting the worst isn't fair. We as a nation, we come together when we have to, and this is one of those times.
Make no mistake, our democracy is being tested in this election.
Heard the voice of my great-granddaughter saying, save democracy now.
On the morning after, with what remained an uncertain outcome, we expected events like this outside Oakland City Hall.
Well, I think democracy was fine, but I don't have any faith in it in this country. I think I've lost it here.
Well, after he's not in power and he has no power, I will say he's a clown.
And yet, despite the frustration, no violence here, no vitriol, still hoping for the best while fearing that worst.
What's threatened is the right to vote, the right to assemble, the right to have freedom of speech, the right to have any kind of civil liberties, the right to be different than white Anglo-Saxon.
We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land.
As the day moved along, with more tallies of write-in ballots, the numbers began to change. By mid-afternoon in San Francisco, more hope and still trepidation.
When democracy is under attack, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do?
And on it went into the night.
Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience as well.
If you ever took democracy for granted, these last few days may have changed that. 270 electoral votes, no longer just a number. Thursday morning, and in the Mission, those booths where volunteers clutched that rock and made phone calls, now abandoned. Inside, a party, not over, but definitely on hold. And Manny Ucchiedio, still cautious. The man who told us on Monday that he trusts democracy now says this won't be over for him until January 20th, Inauguration Day.
I'm anxious. I'm suspicious of this man.
Even now.
Especially now.